case of Ariel Castro, the monster from Cleveland, and his captives, is a striking example of brutal criminals hiding behind the facade of normalcy. Maniacs like Castro often appear as good, law-abiding citizens, fooling neighbors, friends, colleagues, and even close relatives who are unaware of their double lives. Unlike many, Ariel Castro was never a model family man or worker. He was a tyrant to his wife, who chose to stay silent about her suffering. Thus, people around them sincerely viewed Ariel as a good-natured, friendly, and helpful neighbor. This perception shattered in the spring of 2013 when the world learned about the Cleveland monster who had kept 3 girls captive in his home for 10 years. The revelation shook the country, particularly shocking the local residents, as the missing girls were from the same neighborhood and trusted Castro enough to accept rides from him. Remarkably, Castro even participated in the search efforts for his victims, becoming a volunteer, yet no one suspected him. Let's delve into how this criminal managed to stay hidden in plain sight, continue kidnapping girls, and evade detection. Ariel Rodriguez Castro was born on July 10, 1960 in Yauco, Puerto Rico, as the third of 4 children in a poor family. His parents, Liliana Rodriguez and Pedro Castro, constantly fought and eventually divorced before Ariel started school, leaving his mother to care for him and his siblings, O'Neill, Pedro, and Bonita. Struggling to make ends meet, the family moved to Reading, Pennsylvania, in southeastern USA. However, they soon moved to the neighboring state of Ohio, finally settling in Cleveland, a city that at the time welcomed migrants from Latin American countries. Pedro Castro also moved to Cleveland with his new wife and their joint children, settling nearby so the children from his first marriage could freely communicate with their father, which Liliana never forbade. Although their father willingly contacted his older children, he never helped them financially. Liliana later remarried, giving Ariel 4 more siblings. Ariel attended Lincoln West High School in Cleveland, graduating in 1978. He studied music and regularly attended church with his family, presenting as a model Christian, but was a domestic tyrant. In his teens, Ariel met a girl named Grimilda Figueroa, whose family lived across the street. They attended the same school, quickly became friends, and later developed a romantic relationship. For a long time, they lived with their parents because they couldn't afford their own place. In the early 1990s, after saving enough money, the couple moved into a house on Seymour Avenue in southwest Cleveland. This 2-story building, erected in 1890 and later reconstructed, had 4 bedrooms, a dining room, 1 bathroom, and a large unfinished basement. According to Grimilda's sister, Alita Caballo, Grimilda complained that her life became a nightmare after moving into the new house. Ariel regularly abused her, both physically and emotionally. Grimilda believed things would improve after marriage and children, but the abuse worsened. She hid bruises and abrasions under her clothes, blaming visible injuries on clumsiness. In 1993, Ariel beat Grimilda so severely that she needed medical attention. Grimilda suffered fractured ribs, a broken nose, and broken arms after being pushed down the stairs by her husband. Despite her severe injuries, she refused to file a police report, and the incident was hushed up. After receiving medical attention, she returned to her abusive husband. Ariel remained quiet for a while, fearing police attention, but soon realized he could get away with it, and continued to beat his wife. In the mid-1990s, he inflicted a head injury that caused a blood clot and an inoperable tumor. Ariel was arrested, but released a day later, as Grimilda did not press charges and even requested his release. By the late 1990s, Grimilda, tired of the abuse, filed for divorce, secured custody of their 4 children, Arlene, Antonio, Angie, and Amelia, and moved out. Her nightmare continued as her ex-husband pursued, blackmailed, and threatened her. Grimilda sought a restraining order, which was issued 3 times but revoked each time. She passed away in late April 2012 from complications related to the brain tumor. By then, her children were grown and independent, but maintained a warm relationship with their father. In the early 2000s, Ariel lived alone on Seymour Avenue, worked as a school bus driver, played guitar at city festivals, and was known as a good-natured, hospitable neighbor. Nevertheless, there were oddities in Castro's behavior that went unnoticed. For instance, he was prosecuted several times for traffic violations, including speeding and making dangerous U-turns while driving a school bus. These infractions led to fines and a suspension, culminating in his firing in early 2013 after a maneuver endangered his passengers. Ariel frequently changed musical groups due to tardiness and disrupting rehearsals and concerts. After separating from his wife, he never invited anyone inside his house, though he regularly hosted backyard barbecues. His strangeness did not raise concern. He was seen as eccentric but harmless. No one could have guessed the danger behind his friendly facade. His first victim was Michelle Knight. On August 23, 2002, Ariel decided to kidnap and imprison her. Michelle, born on April 23, 1981, in Cleveland, had a troubled youth, often ran away from home, and had a police record. She became a mother early, but lost custody of her son, who was in a shelter. On that fateful day, she was on her way to court to regain custody of her 2-year-old. Ariel, whom she knew as her neighbor and a school bus driver, offered her a ride. He mentioned having puppies at home and invited her to help find them homes. Trusting him, Michelle agreed, but upon entering his house, the kind man turned into a monster. He severely beat and assaulted her, then chained her in the basement. For days, he starved her, deprived her of water, and repeatedly abused her. She was unable to move and begged for her release, promising silence. When Michelle's mother reported her missing, the police did not prioritize her case. Years later, after the terrible truth came to light, police officers admitted that Michelle Knight's case was not a priority, and limited resources were allocated to the investigation. Firstly, Knight was an adult. Secondly, she had previously left home multiple times. Thirdly, she had legal issues. Most importantly, authorities believed she was avoiding court proceedings related to her son's custody. Michelle's relatives tried to find her through their own efforts, involving neighbors, friends, and anyone concerned. At one point, Ariel Castro even helped post flyers with Michelle's photo around the city, all while she remained a prisoner in his basement. The second victim was Amanda Berry. Castro, convinced he was beyond suspicion, decided to kidnap again in spring 2003. Amanda, born on April 22, 1986, was about to celebrate her 17th birthday, but mysteriously disappeared on April 21, 2003. She was working as a waitress and called home after her shift, promising to be there soon. However, Amanda never arrived, and neither did she appear in the following days, months, or years. As Amanda left the restaurant and headed for the bus stop, Ariel drove up with a seemingly harmless offer of a ride home. Since she had been in the same class as his son for several years, she trusted him and accepted. On the way, he deceived her into entering his house, where he brutally beat her and dragged her to the basement, where Michelle had been held captive for months. Amanda faced the same horrific fate, beaten and starved for several days. This time, he chose 14-year-old Georgina Linda Jesus, who was in the same class as his daughter Arlene and was her best friend. On April 2, 2004, two girls walked out of school together, talked for a while, and then each went to their homes. On the corner of West 105th Street, Gina met Ariel, who promised to take her home. She knew him since childhood, was her best friend's father, so without hesitation she got into his car immediately. Even though it was daytime and no one witnessed the kidnapping, the streets were empty. When it became known that Gina was missing, there was no warning to Amber, making her parents angry. The story aired on the Fox television show, America's Most Wanted, rerun 2 more times in 2005 and 2006. The disappearance was linked to Amanda's kidnapping a year earlier in September. But Castro remained unsuspected. Despite this, he voluntarily participated in the search for the missing girls. He treated Gina like the other victims, keeping them imprisoned in his home. Although a passerby saw a middle-aged Hispanic man, and a sketch resembling Castro was drawn, he was never a suspect. For over 10 years, he regularly beat, abused, and starved his victims to mentally break them down, punishing any disobedience or escape attempts to prevent thoughts of death. Running away. Michel, the first and oldest victim, suffered the most, undergoing public beatings to intimidate others. Finally, he moved them from the dark basement to a second-floor room with a view of the backyard. Knight recalls that she became pregnant by her abuser at least 5 times during her incarceration. However, each time it became obvious Ariel terminated the pregnancy in the most brutal way. He starved the girl and kicked her in the stomach until she miscarried. After one of these tortures, she almost died due to severe bleeding. But even then, the kidnapper remained indifferent and did not allow calling an ambulance. The girls were allowed to take a shower no more than once a week, and that as a reward for good behavior. Instead of a toilet, they had a garden bucket, which Castro very rarely and reluctantly took out. The criminal fed the captives no more than once a day, but continued to beat and use them regularly. One day he gave the girls a puppy, but a week later he brutally killed the dog in front of them as punishment for Michel's disobedience. Gina, during the years of confinement, has never been pregnant. But Amanda in 2006 realized that she was expecting a child and with horror imagined how Ariel would beat her to provoke a miscarriage. This time, however, the man was even happy about it, allowed her to carry the baby, and he bought himself an inflatable pool specifically for childbirth. In December 2006, Amanda gave birth to a daughter who was named Jocelyn. The child was born weak but still survived. The appearance of the baby is very close to the girls, who were now immersed in caring for him and a little abstracted from the situation in which they were. In addition, Castro softened considerably after the birth of his daughter and began to pamper the captives with small gifts, and sometimes allowed them to go out with the child for walks in the courtyard, but always under his strict supervision. As Jocelyn grew older, Ariel even sometimes took her to visit her mother, to whom he told her that she was his daughter born out of wedlock. The girl developed appropriately for her age. She articulated herself adeptly, a skill instilled by her mother's tutelage in literacy and numeracy. Outwardly, the child bore the hallmarks of robust health, appearing well-nourished and impeccably groomed. Despite enduring years of captivity under the unyielding control of their tormentor, the girls clung steadfastly to the flickering flame of hope for freedom. Infrequent attempts at escape were made, though each endeavor exacted a heavy toll upon them. Cruy and Ariel, confident in their ability to preempt their every move, faltered fatally on May 6, 2013. Amanda seized the fleeting chance when an unlocked door beckoned, frantically alerting a passing neighbor by pounding and shrieking at a window. Though initially perplexed, the neighbor's intuition was roused, prompting swift action and summoning law enforcement to the scene. Amanda divulged her identity and unmasked the presence of 2 other captives, Michel and Gina. After enduring a decade of captivity, all 3 were emancipated and promptly hospitalized. While Amanda and Gina exhibited no discernible health concerns, Michel bore the heavy burden of severe physical and psychological trauma. Deafness plagued one ear, vision was severely impaired, and a litany of untreated fractures necessitated extensive reconstructive surgery. Furthermore, the scourge of abuse-induced complications left her forever robbed of the chance of motherhood. Suspicions of complicity led to the detention of his siblings, O'Neill and Pedro, both frequent visitors to his domain. In due course, the men found themselves swiftly released. On the other hand, Castro faced a litany of charges, including kidnapping, abuse, assault, forced imprisonment, and the heinous act of terminating 5 unborn lives. While the legal ramifications of these charges could have sentenced him to life behind bars, the prosecution aimed for the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, branding Castro as the Cleveland Monster. However, a surprising twist unfolded as Castro opted to collaborate with the investigation, confessing his guilt and recounting the harrowing events in exchange for a commutation of the death penalty to life imprisonment. In his chilling narratives, he meticulously detailed the days of abduction and the subsequent torment inflicted upon his victims, all the while deflecting responsibility onto the very individuals he subjected to such horrors. August 1st, 2013 marked the culmination of legal proceedings, with Castro sentenced to spend the remainder of his days incarcerated without the possibility of parole. Yet, his parting words echoed with a mix of remorse and denial as he tendered an apology to his victims, claiming affliction rather than culpability, and casting blame upon law enforcement for their purported ineptitude in failing to uncover the atrocities transpiring right under their noses. Castro's residence met its end on August 7, 2013, reduced to rubble in a symbolic act of closure. The solemn occasion was attended solely by the kin of Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus, with other participants of the nightmarish ordeal choosing to abstain, unwilling to revisit the site that had served as the backdrop for their unimaginable anguish. Nevertheless, amidst the rubble emerged a glimmer of hope, as on July 9, 2013, Knight, Berry, and DeJesus released a joint video expressing profound gratitude to the public for their unwavering support throughout their journey toward reclaiming their lives. It was their only joint statement after which, despite the years spent together in confinement, the girls chose never to speak to each other again. The maniac was transferred to a correctional center in Orient, Ohio, after his conviction and placed under special supervision. But on September 3, 2013, just a month after he began serving his life sentence, the Cleveland monster was found hanging from a sheet in his prison cell. All attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. He was 53 years old at the time of his death. Michelle Knight, after her release, preferred to change her name and place of residence. She did not give interviews, but a few years later published a book in which she recounted all the horrors she had experienced in the Castro home. Her child was adopted after his mother disappeared. The woman later tracked down his adoptive parents, but it is not known whether she was able to establish contact with her now adult son. Barry and Jesus received diplomas from John Marshall High School in 2015 because they never had time to graduate. Gina later volunteered on the Amber Alert Committee, and Barry joined Fox affiliate WJW in Cleveland in 2017, where she hosts a missing persons column. Castro family members disowned Ariel, condemned his actions, and apologized to his victims and their families. The perpetrator's eldest daughter, Amelia, is now serving a 25-year prison sentence for assault and attempting to take a man's life. His youngest daughter, Arlene, apologized to former best friend Gina for the way her father treated her. Castro's son, Antonio, said he had been to his father's house and saw that some rooms were locked and inaccessible, but his parent explained it was because he was saving money on heating. In 2018, Michelle published a book titled Life After Darkness: Finding Healing and Happiness After the Cleveland Kidnappings. DeJesus also wrote a book of memoirs titled Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland. There have also been numerous documentary projects and 2 feature films about those horrific events: Prisoners of Cleveland, which was released in 2015, and Kidnapped in Cleveland, which was released in 2021. Ariel Castro's case is one of the most horrifying cases in American criminal history. Castro was convicted of kidnapping, holding, and sexually abusing 3 women for more than a decade in his home. Castro kidnapped Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight at his home in the Tremont section of Cleveland. He kept them in terrible conditions, imprisoned in small rooms, and subjected to physical and mental torture. Finally, Berry managed to escape captivity by banging on the door and calling for help. She and the baby girl she gave birth to in captivity were rescued, along with DeJesus and Knight. When the police arrived, they discovered the brutal tragedy that Castro had caused. Castro was later arrested and convicted of a series of crimes, including rape, illegal arrest, and unresolved murder. He received a sentence of life in prison plus 1,000 years. However, he committed suicide in prison in September 2013, just 2 months after his arrest. This case caused a stir and sparked special interest in the issue of domestic violence and human rights protection.